introduction, and let's start with the presentation. Shall I share my screen?
Let's do it.
Okay, so today I'm going to present 6 secrets in Google Data Studio. Actually, 7 secrets, because there was one small secret that I couldn't decide, should I keep it, should I leave it. I was hoping to make the list into 6, but I have a bonus for you as well. So 7 secrets, or 6 with a bonus. But as Mesa said, these are not secrets. These are just lesser known facts and features and tricks in Data Studio that when I talk with people, they usually don't know that these features exist in Data Studio. But as we work with Data Studio day in, day out, as we do a lot of reporting and data pipelines for our clients, these are the things that we use on a day-to-day basis. Some of these you might know, but I'm sure that there are some things that will surprise you in this presentation, so stay through the end. Okay, so let's start with the first one, easy page settings. And as you can see here, I'm saying that Data Studio reports can have multiple pages. I'm sure most of you know that. Data Studio reports are not a single page report. It can be a dashboard with several pages. Each page can have different charts and graphs and tables on them. And all of these pages can create a single dashboard. But something that you might not have known about is that each page can have its own canvas size. Okay, what does it mean? So usually when you look at the Data Studio dashboard with multiple pages, all of those pages, they have the same size. Either they are 16:9, or either they are more square, or much longer or taller. All of them have the same size, but actually you can right click on the page, go to the current page settings, and actually give it a different canvas size based on the actual data that you're presenting on that page. Usually we use it for the pages that are much more taller than the rest of the pages, or for the first page and last page, which have just some settings for the reports. It can also has its own background color. So if you adjust the background color of the report, you're not limited to using that color for the rest of the pages. It can have its default data source and default filter. So you can have a data source, and each page can have its own filter. For example, one page can only show organic data, one page can only show pay-per-click or paid ads data. Let's do a live demo. So this is my demo Data Studio report that I'm going to use in this session. And this is a page with a custom canvas size. So the rest of the pages, if I switch between pages, they have different sizes. Okay, so this is a page with a kind of more square size, and there is no filter applied at page level to this table in the middle. So you see all of those source mediums sending traffic to this website. But the next one, it has another canvas size, so it's taller, but at the page level, a filter is applied, source equals Google. And then when this filter is applied to the page, every chart and graph that you add to this page are going to inherit that setting and only have the sources where it equals Google. And the next one has another filter applied at the chart level, medium equals PPC. So it's getting its size from page settings, it's getting the page level filter from, again, the page setting, but each chart can have its own filter that applies on top of the page level filter as well. Let's go to edit mode and see how it's done. So to access the page level setting, you have to right click on the page itself, and the actual menu is the color. The color matches the background color of the page, and you can go to current page setting. Here we can adjust the default data source, the default date range dimension, and the default page filter. We can also adjust this time. So here I can make this page, let's Let's go back to page setting. So in the style tab, here's where you can adjust the canvas size. So you can make this like 300 pixels, which is too narrow. You can make it 700 pixels to make it a bit larger. And also you can adjust the height of the report as well, okay? And the background color. So this is how it's done from now on. If you want to have a dashboard with pages with different background colors, with different sizes, you can absolutely do that. One thing that I wanted to share about the page settings is that there is a hierarchy. There's a hierarchy in Data Studio for these settings. So the utmost priority is at the chart level. So if you apply a filter at the chart level, it's going to apply to that chart. After that is the chart group level, when you group some components together, and then it's page and report. So if you apply something at the report level, you can overwrite it at page level, you can overwrite it at the chart level. Next, set of secrets. Not one secret, but a set of secrets. So as you know, in Data Studio, it's possible to copy and paste component styles. I'm not talking about components itself when you copy a scorecard and just paste it to make another scorecard and duplicate it, but actually the style that is applied to that scorecard. So you can copy a scorecard, but when you're pasting it, you can paste the style only. The fonts, the color, the background color, the border radius, etc. Okay, but when it comes so handy is when you want to copy paste the style to many components. And it's good to know that when you want to copy paste a style, the best time and the best scenario to do that is to copy a style from one component and paste it to the similar components on the page. So if you're copying the style from a scorecard, it's best to paste that style to other scorecards, for example, not tables, because the settings are exactly the same and the styles will be copy pasted exactly the way you want them. Now, it brings us to the need to be able to kind of easily select all of the components that are similar to each other on a page. Maybe on a page we have like 20, 30 scorecards. We don't want to actually select them one by one. So what I'm going to present on this styling secret is copy, bulk select, and then paste. Let's see how it works. Now here I have a table with some styling applied to it, and a simple table with no styling at all, okay? Also a scorecard with some styling applied to it, and another scorecard, two more scorecards with no styling at all, and also some lines. Let's see how it works. So first of all, I'm going to select this, and instead of pushing Control C, I'm going to use the menu so it's visible in the recording. So I copied the actual table, but what I can do is to click on this table, right click, and say paste styles only. If I have more than one table and I want to select them all, what I can do is to right click on any table on the report and then select tables on the page. It will select all the tables that it can find on that page. And then I can right click, paste the special, and paste the styles only. And the styling of this table will apply to this table and the other tables as well. Something that I want to note, that you can see that here I have a conditional formatting applied to this table. Conditional formatting will be pasted as well. So as you can see, this table right now also has one conditional formatting rule applied to it. Again, let's try it. Copy this scorecard, right click on the scorecard, select all the scorecard on the page. There are three of them, right click and paste the size only. Everything will be applied. The color, the alignments, these are now center aligned. These are with the white background and the border radius. And this one down here is just to demonstrate that we can do this with the lines too. So we can copy a line even, and then right click on a line and select all lines on the page. And this is really handy because lines are usually the hardest ones to select. And then we can then, I just deselected them. Select line on the page. It's really hard to click or right click on a line. and then paste style only. And you can change the color of all of them at once. You can change the thickness of all of them at once. Next one is usage tracking. So you might wonder, what is usage tracking? Is it a data studio? But yeah, you can track the usage of your data studio reports in Google Analytics. So it's possible for you to create a property in your Google Analytics, preferably a different property than the one your website uses, just for this purpose, and then put the analytics tracking ID inside report settings in your data studio reports to see how many people use that report. And it's just like a basic Google Analytics tracking with page views and some events, but it can give you actually much data and insight into how your clients and the people that you're sharing your report with are actually using those reports, or aren't they, or if they're not actually using any report and you just created them and nobody is using them. This is a really cool feature. And even cooler than that is that when you start tracking your Data Studio reports usage in Google Analytics, then you can report on the usage of your Data Studio reports in Data Studio with a template. It's it's a bit complicated. It sounds a bit complicated, but yeah, you can actually do that. Let me show you this template live. So this is actually a template that I have for some Data Studio reports that we have, and we want to see who is using them. So here we can see the location of people accessing those reports. Here we can see the number of page views, the average time on page, and through events tracking, we can actually see how many people duplicated the report that we had and how many people made a copy. So made a copy is me because I had edit access to the reports, and duplicated templates is where I create a template and share it with public to make a copy from it. So this is when people create a copy from my templates. This is where I create a copy from one of my own Data Studio reports. And here we can see what was the report title, what was the internal page of that report. So I have a Google Analytics audit report template made with Data Studio. I can click here and filter that and see what pages do people see more on that report, okay? From where do they access that report, and what is the average time on page and page views, which is not so much because I haven't shared it with many people yet. So if you stay at the end, I'm going to share the link to this report template with you so you can report on your Data Studio report usage. The next one, the audit log. This is what I consider a secret because I haven't seen anyone actually using them, maybe just a few people. So there is audit logs in Google Data Studio in your Google admin account that actually shows you who has accessed the report, who has viewed, who has edited, what was their IP, what was their owner of the report, and everything that you might want to know about the people whom you've shared the report to and are accessing your report. So if I click on this, it will open my Google admin page, and I can see all the things that were happening with the reports that I've shared with people.
Now, I have a quick question on this. Is this just Google Suite?
Yeah, it's Google
right?
Suite.
So you'd have to have Google Suite to do this. So it's not going to work if you have a regular Gmail account because you don't have a Google
I believe so, because I don't use Data Studio with a Gmail account, so I don't actually know that. But I've always had access to this one, and we are on Google Suite, so yeah.
Yeah, and I think the majority of people probably are. Yeah, that's perfect.
Yep. So this is something that you can also use to get more insight on how your own employees are editing the reports, because when someone is editing a report, the data is not going to be sent to that Google Analytics that tracks the usage of the report. Okay, that one, the Google Analytics just tracks the usage of the report when it's in view mode and not when it's in edit mode. So this, you can see more information about who's doing what with the reports that you've created inside your organization.
So theoretically, but you have to be the owner, right?
Yep.
Okay, so if you're
Yep,
the owner,
exactly.
let's say you have a team of people that are working on dashboards for you, and if you're the owner of the dashboard, you can sort of keep an eye on if they were doing what they need to do too, right?
Yep.
As a way to sort of
Exactly.
manage the team in the process. That's
Yep.
great.
Now we've arrived to the bonus sections. And that's just a fun thing in the middle of all these things that might be boring for some people. That Data Studio actually supports emojis, and this is not just a fun thing. Emojis are really good because these are not just smiley faces. There are lots of icons in the emojis right now that are supported on many devices that you can use to visually communicate what is happening on your report and have some icons to actually draw people's attentions to the places that they need to interact with. Let me show you some examples. So here, and this one is quick. So we can have emojis in the titles. Okay, so for example, if something is coming from BigQuery, we can have a text here that shows this is being loaded quickly from BigQuery. And we can also have emojis in field names. So we can have a scorecard, new users, and have something that represents a user. The way of doing that is to edit the field's name here. And actually, when typing a new title or name for the field, you can copy and paste any emoji that you want, and it shows up in the scorecard as well. You can also have them in the drop-down menus in filter controls. So select a country. It would be something not so interesting if I just put country here, but here I again renamed the name of the field from country to select a country, and then added an emoji. This is actually an emoji, this icon. So it actually helps you create better looking reports that people actually enjoy using. And finally, which is a bit more advanced use of emojis, is that you can use emojis in function and custom fields as well. So here we have device category. Okay, device category could be desktop, mobile, or tablet in a Google Analytics data source. And then I've created a case statement, a case function that returns an emoji based on the value of device category. Let's take a look at it. So if I go to edit mode and then go to my field, find that field, which is named device icon. And let's take a look at the function. So this is the function, case device category. When it's desktop, show this. When it's mobile, show this. When it's tablet, show this. You can do this, for example, to create different icons for new and returning users, for different age ranges, for different country flags, because those are also included in the emojis as well. Okay, so we've gone through a page setting, page background colors, usage tracking, emojis, things that are really about maybe styling and the layout of the pages and tracking. And now in the second part of the presentation, we are going to do more with data. So from this part forward, it would be more about data, less about the styling and tricks like that. First of all, I'm going to start with data blending. I'm sure that many of you or all of you have heard of data blending. You know that it's a saying that we can do that, but there are some tips and some features in data blending that you might not know, and we are going to cover them as well. So it's possible to blend. This is two metrics. This is my typo. Okay, blend two metrics to create ratios. And that's the easiest way of using data blending. So you have one metric from a data source or a filtered metric on one hand, and on the other hand, you have another metric, for example, number of sales, from another data source or something that is also filtered. So you cannot use these metrics in a normal function, but you want to divide them together to create a ratio. And with a simple data blending, you can just divide them and have a new metric called revenue divided by number of sales, which is called average order value. Now let's demo the simple way of creating a blended data. And then we'll go and see the manual way and a more complicated way as well. Okay, so here, when you have two metrics, either from different data sources, or maybe you filtered them or applied a segment so you cannot easily use them in your function, in your custom fields in the formulas, what you need to do to divide them together is that first you select the numerator, okay, and then you keep control key and then select the denominator. And once you do that, you right click, and at the bottom of this list, which I cannot see right now in my screen, oh, interesting, isn't it? Let me scroll down a bit. Again, select this one first, then the denominator, and yes, we have it here, blend data. When you click blend data, Data Studio actually creates a new data source which only contains this metric and this metric, new users and users, and it automatically divides them together to create a percentage ratio metric for you. So this is the actual ratio of new users to the total users. And this is a blended data source. This is the simplest way of using blended data sources. Now, let's take a look at some more advanced way or manual ways of creating data sources, because we don't always want to show scorecards with ratios. We have more use cases for wanting to have data from different data sources and show them in one chart or one graph. This is one of those examples. Let's say you want to show the cost and actual spend in Google Ads and Facebook Ads on a single chart. Usually it's not possible because each of these are on its own data source. There is a Google Ads data source, there is a Facebook Ad data source, and it's only possible to connect one chart to one data source in Data Studio. So first we need to blend them together to create these, to be able to link them to any chart or graph to show them this way. Something that is really important about data blending when you do it like this, when you blend one data source with another data source with a join key, like for date. So this one is joined based on date. Join key is actually the field that Data Studio uses to match data, to match rows from these two data sources together. So here we have like months of January. It goes and finds January in this data source and in this data source and grabs the amount spent and plots them on this time series, okay? Now, data blending is actually a left join in terms of SQL or working with data. When we have two tables and we do a left join on them, the table or data source which is on the left limits the data that is going to be returned from right data source. Maybe it's not really clear in this page, but the next page, and I forgot to make them full screen so it's better visible. Here we can see what is the left join. So we have the left table and only the rows in the right table that match with data that is already in the left table will be returned. Okay, we cannot join two tables. This is called union, which we return all of the data in the right data source and combine it with all data with the left data source. An example of this would be, for example, let's say we have two Google Analytics properties. One we were using last year, so it has data from January to December last year, but this one has data from this January for this year to date. Okay, there is no overlap between these two tables based on date, because dates that are on the left table, they are non-existent in the right table and vice versa. So in this case, we want to join them, union them together. We want to combine them together like this, add them together. This is not possible directly in Data Studio. And if we do a left join, we have nothing, because the property that has data for this year, there is no overlap between data from last year. Okay. Now let's first see this data blending in action, the left join in action, because it's really important to understand the idea of left join before I tell you a workaround to have some kind of unions in Data Studio so you can combine two datasets with no overlap with each other. So this is an actual data blending that I've created in Data Studio. I have two tables here which are in a Google Sheet. So first table has IDs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and names John, me, Mike, Sarah, and Chris. Okay. The next table, which is another data source. Remember, we cannot. These two are not one data source. One table, one spreadsheet is one data source, and this one is another data source. The second data source again has IDs 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, names. Some of the names are the same as the ones that we had in the first table, like Sarah and Chris, okay, number 4 and 5, but the rest are new. So these 4 people, they're non-existent in the left table, but the right table has values for sales. How much did these people sell during that time frame, for example? And I've connected these two to my Data Studio report here. And we can see left data source, 1 to 5, names, right data source, 4 to 9, names, and only these two, the sales from these two people, are being returned into blended data. For the rest of them, for me, for example, we get null because there is no Ahmad in the right data source. So these will be discarded when we do a left join between this table and this table. And the only ones that we can have data for are the ones that are both on the right table and on the left table, just like we have here, both part of the right table and part of the right table. Was my explanation clear to this point?
I think so, but let me talk it back to you just to see if I've got it. So what you're saying is the left data source, because it has IDs 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, but it does not contain the rest. It doesn't contain 6, 7, 8, 9. It doesn't matter what else comes when you're blending data, what you're trying to combine. It doesn't matter because the left data source is what determines kind of the universe that it has access to. In this case, its universe is only those 5 IDs, and that's it. So if it's not anything about 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. So in other words, we could talk about sales or last name or phone number, all the other stuff, as long as it's associated to 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. But the second that we go past that, it's not going to work.
Yeah. So basically, anything in the right data source that has this ID is the join key. This is what Data Studio uses to join these two tables together. Anything in the right data source exactly that has an ID that is non-existent in the left data source, these 4 people, it will be discarded.
And that specifically isn't associated to that join key in the left data source.
Yeah.
Right. So I could say, just like you did with sales, where sales is now showing up, there could be another column that says phone number and, last name or whatever.
You could have.
So you can go wide.
Any other columns for these people, these rows will be discarded.
Yep.
Because these are not existent. The IDs of these rows is not existent in the left data source.
That sounds like a challenge. I bet you have a workaround for this.
Yeah. So the way that we kind of work around this limitation sometimes, especially for the example that I gave you a bit before about 2 different Google Analytics properties which have dates that do not overlap, is that we create a Google Sheet, a spreadsheet with all dates in it. Okay, so it has a column with all of the dates from 2 years ago to date, and we use that as the leftmost data set. So we use a data set that has all the values for the join key that we want, and then we add other data sources, because in Data Studio we can have up to 4 right data sources. So it doesn't have to be 2. We can have left, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 other data sources joined with that. Now, if I want to show it with in my presentation, it works like this. So we have left and right table. We do not overlap based on the join key that we want to use, but we create another left table, the Google Sheet, that has a bigger universe, as you said. It has all the values for that join key in it, but nothing else. It's just IDs or maybe names or maybe another column. It doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that this table would decide that those IDs are existing, and now the left table would be right table number 1, the right table would be right table number 2, and both of these can be joined with that left table. So what we'll have is kind of a union, a combination of those two tables together.
I dig that. I think that is super creative. And so going back to your example, because it was talking about IDs, not dates in your example, right? So what you would do is using this technique would be you would have a spreadsheet, a third tab or whatever, that would have IDs 1 through 9. That's it.
Exactly.
It just says ID 1 through 9. There is no name. There is no anything else, because that particular tab is there just to give the join key and the range that you're looking for in the join key. And then in this case, like what is currently saying left data source will become right data source 1. What is currently saying right data source becomes right data source number 2. And then that, of course, your new thing that you created, IDs 1 through 9, and now everything just associates perfectly because you've defined, you essentially made a data source that just defines the join key, which dramatically, I think, simplifies a lot of the errors people see with blended data, where it's this stuff that's causing the problem and they don't really know why. And I think
usually people do not understand that there should be an overlap, and they think that they are doing a union, combining data together, appending two data sources together, where in actual world it's not like that, and it just leads to confusion.
Right, absolutely. Because I remember doing this stuff in Data Studio when it first came out, and it was like, they both have ID, therefore fine. But it's not. Yeah. It's the range of the ID in the left data source that's doing that. So you're saying create a spreadsheet.
Exactly. I was doing that as well. So I learned it the hard way. I mean, it took me a while until I noticed in the documentation that it actually was a left join and it wasn't blending data.
This is huge. This is going to solve people. There are people, I guarantee you watching this right now, they're like, oh, that's why that's happening. You're writing this down. That is a huge tip. That is, and if you haven't run into this yet, that's okay. You will eventually, and now you'll know why. So this is great.
And it also means that the order of your data sources matter. So keep in mind when you're blending data sources, which one do you place as the left data source and which one do you place as the right data source? Because sometimes you might not need this workaround, but the only thing that you might need is to switch the position of left and right data sources to get the answer that you want, to get the data set, the blended data set that you're after. Okay, so that's it about the data blending. And the next one, which I'm excited about to share with you, is the row level security. So usually what we know about Data Studio is that we create some reports and dashboards. We can share them like a Google document. We can share the public link with everyone. We can share with specific people through their email, just like the screenshot that I have here. We put their email address and we select if they can view or edit the report or whether to notify them or not, and we send the report to them. Okay, now anyone who we share the report this way with them would have access to all pages of the report. It's not that we can say they couldn't see this page, but they can see that page. They couldn't see this set of data, but not that part of data. If they have access to view, they can view it all. This is something that by default is our perception of how Data Studio works. The security of sharing Data Studio dashboard works. But actually, we can have and we can set row level security to limit access to data by email. So if we let's assume that we have a large table of data, we can set row level security to say Ahmed can only see these rows and Mercer, for example, can only see the other rows. For example, let's say that you have like 10 salespeople or 10 branches in the country, and you have a single Data Studio report for all of them, but you want to give each branch or each affiliate or each salesperson the level of access to only take a look at their own sales and not everyone else's, right? If you want to do that, there is a feature in Data Studio which is called filter by email. First of all, your data source at the row level should have the email address of the person to whom you want to give access to view that row. Let's take a look at the data set and it will become a bit more clear. So here I have a sample data set with name of salespeople, for example, myself and Peter, the order IDs, the number of units sold, the price, the cost, and the actual revenue from each order. Okay. If I create a Data Studio report with this data set and I share it with myself and Peter, both of us can see each other's data because we can see the table, right? But I want Peter to only see his sales and I want myself to only be able to see my own sales. And this becomes possible with the addition of this column at the beginning. So I have to first edit the data set. So it only works with the data set that you have control on to add this additional column to see, okay, this row can be accessed by hello@siavak.com when they are logged in to the Google account and they're accessing the Data Studio report. The way that it works is that when you're editing the data set, you see this filter by email, you click on it, and then you set the field that's actually being used as email. So in this case, it's the field name is email as well. Then anyone who's using the reports has to grant their consent for the email address to be used by Google Data Studio to limit the data set. So if they click allow, and then they access the report, let me grab the report, the sample report that I've created, low row level security. So in this report, I cannot show it again because I've granted access a while ago, like 2 hours ago. But you can see that this is connected to data spreadsheet. We can check the data source together. So this is the data source. Email, name, order ID, total revenue, unit cost. And we can see that it's a spreadsheet, row level security, the data tab. And here I have set filter by email to use the email field to match it with the email address of the person accessing the report. And because I have granted my access, I can only see rows for myself. If I remove that functionality, if I don't filter that, and I view the report again, then I can also see Peter's cells, right? But if it's enabled, anyone. So this is really important because before we use this functionality, what we used to do is to create a report and then duplicate the report like 10 times, 20 times for each branch or for each salesperson, filtering the actual table so they can only see their own data. And when we wanted to update the report and add some changes or fix some part of it, then we had to go and apply the same fix to all of those 20 duplicated reports as well. And this was really tedious and time consuming. But this way, if you can access your data source, if you can add the email address, you can add row level security and actually have a nicer days and weeks working with Data Studio.
Yeah, this is great, man. I think this solves a lot of problems that people have. And it just, again, it's one of those cool things that Data Studio couldn't do a year ago and now does because they're just constantly rolling out new features. So I love that you're showing this one to us.
Okay, so the next and final secret is about field IDs. You might have noticed them, you might not have noticed them. We're gonna cover them in detail today. So first of all, you know that we can create calculated fields in Data Studio. We can divide different fields together, for example, session by user to create a field named session per user, or create something like this, which I'm using a field and a parameter, or create this device icon field using a case function. These are all examples of calculated custom fields in Data Studio. We know how to use them. It's straightforward. Everyone kind of knows that they exist. But when we are creating a custom field, what you might not have noticed is that there's a field ID, which is usually a random kind of string after the word calc and underline. I used to ignore it all of the time. It was automatically generated. I didn't have any reason to just care about it until I found a use case that we can actually use this field ID to simplify our reporting and make our life easier. Now, I want to share with you what is it. So, the advanced step is we can use same field ID across different data sources, so we can filter both data sources using a single control. It sounds complicated, so we have to go to the demo and see what do I actually mean. So this is the challenge. Let's see what we've got here. Oh, I was actually in the view mode. I wanted to go to view mode. Okay, so here I have two tables. One is connected to Google Analytics as a data source, and one to Facebook ads. Now, each of these data sources have their own ways of reporting on the device category that the action, the session, or impression happened on, okay? Facebook ads has a field name impression device, and these are the type of values that you can get iPhone, Android, so it distinguishes between iPhone and Android, desktop, iPad, Android tablets, so two types of tablets, iPod, and other. And then we have device category, which is simpler in Google Analytics, which has desktop, mobile, and tablet. Just these three categories of data are present in that. Now, let's say I want to have a control on my reports that I can use to filter reports data to just look at mobile phones, okay? Because these are two different data sources, if I connect this drop-down menu to the Facebook ad, I get this. iPhone, desktop, iPad, Android, and other. If I connect it to device category in Google Analytics, I will get these three values. Now, both of these have desktop as a category. But even so, if I click desktop, this one is only going to filter the charts and components on the report canvas that are connected to the same data source. So this is Facebook ad, this is Facebook ad, this will apply on this and not this one, despite this one having desktop as the value, because it doesn't know these two are the same, okay? How we can do that. Now, in the second example, which is the fix, I've created some custom fields and uses the custom field IDs to make it work. So here we have device, which is a bit more simplified, mobile, tablet, desktop, and others. We have device on this side, which is actually from Facebook ads. It's a case function, I will show you. And we have the same device in Google ads, which is again a custom field, not the usual normal field that is device category. This is device, I have created that. Now, if I click mobile or desktop, both of these tables will be filtered, even though they are different data sources. Now this one, now it doesn't matter to which one of these it's connected. Let's see how it's done. So first of all, I had to create two custom fields, one in each data source. So in the Facebook ads data source, what I've created is the, let's wait for it to load, is a custom field called device. Search for it, device. By FX, you can see that it's a custom field. Okay, device. I have a case function when impression device is within iPhone or Android smartphone or iPod, return mobile, return tablet, return desktop, or else return others. So I've created a simplified device field in my Facebook ads data source. But here, it is not random anymore if you look at it. It's called underline device. So when I was creating this field, I had the chance to come here and actually set my own field ID. I could call it calc underline Admad, for example. Okay, this doesn't have to be a random number. But the good thing about it is, now that I've set this, I could also do the exact same procedure in this one, in this data source, the Google Analytics data source. Here, I've done exactly the same. I created a new custom field called device, which, by the way, is a coincidence. It doesn't matter. We could call the actual field device 2 or device Bugs Bunny, for example. It doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that this one also has the exact same field ID in this data set, in this data source. So for this one, I used the exact field ID, and I just concatenated the device category with nothing, which basically means whatever is in device category, return that one. But so the field is exactly the same, but it has the same field ID that is existing in the Facebook ads data source. Now it doesn't matter if I get device from Facebook ads or if I get device in this drop-down menu from the Google Analytics data source, because regardless of which data source do I get that, device has a field ID which is calc underline device, and it's present in both data sources. When we view that, because that ID, which is something internal that Data Studio uses, is present in in both data sources, it will filter both of them. Okay, so this is what we talked about today. So first of all, we talked about page settings. We saw that we can have multiple pages, and we saw that we can have individual page setting like canvas size, background color, filters, and default data sources, which we can, of course, override if we want. And the hierarchy for overwriting these was report level, page level, component group level, when you select some components and group them together, and finally, chart level. At chart level, you can override everything. Whatever you set at the chart level is going to be the maximum privacy for that setting. Then we saw styling secrets, which you could copy, bulk select similar components, and then paste the style of the component to speed up your work when designing Data Studio reports. You could use emojis, not just in text, but in field names, in tables, in formulas. Then we could track the usage of the Data Studio reports that we create within Google Analytics. We can report on that again within Data Studio, and we can track that again to Google Analytics. It creates a loop, I guess, if we track this report in Google Analytics too. And that we have audit logs for the internal team that are working on the Data Studio report, and we can see anything that they do with their IPs and emails and what they've done in our G Suite, by the way, which thank you, Mercer, for pointing that out. It might not be available for Gmail users. Then we took a look at data blending. We saw that we can blend data, which wasn't a secret. Blend was a left join. We understood what is a left join and how is it different from union, and what are the limitations. And we saw a workaround on how sometimes we can do a union by including a bigger left data source that includes both left and right data sources that do not overlap, but we want to connect with each other, combine with each other. Then we saw some additional security for data, row level security, which we could add email addresses inside our data set to limit the information shown in tables and graphs to only the ones that we want to actually share with those people. And finally, we saw that what field IDs are. We can have custom fields in Data Studio. Each custom field has a field ID, which usually 99.9% of the time you shouldn't actually care about. But if you want to apply one filter to two data sources, you can use identical field IDs to make that happen. And that's it. Here I am, Ahmed. I have a blog, that's siavak.com. You can read my article. It's there. You can connect with me through email, through LinkedIn, through Twitter. Here's the link to that Data Studio tracking template that I shown in the middle of the session. So if you go to this page, you can download that template and use it to report on the Data Studio reports that you track. And here's what I and my team do. We create data pipelines, we create reporting dashboards, we create custom data connectors to bring data into Data Studio from tools, marketing and analytics tools that are not accessible. There's no data connector for yet. We do create data connectors for them, and we create custom visualizations for Data Studio to expand the type of data and the ways that you can show data in your Data Studio reports and interact with them.
Now, that is excellent. Admad, thank you. This has just been a ton of value. Really cool stuff. No matter if you're just starting out in Data Studio or if you've got some experience with Data Studio, there is something for everybody in this particular presentation. So thank you again for this. Also want to stress, I cannot stress enough, Ahmad and I have known each other for years. We met when he was taking some of our courses. I know you've taken some of Julian's stuff too. And Ahmad is one of those guys who is taking and learning and growing, and he takes whatever he's taught and whatever he learns and he takes it to the next level. So much so that Julian and I both have learned a ton from Ahmad. So it's all coming back now. And this is just another example of that. That's a very long-winded way of saying follow this guy. So make sure you get on Ahmad's list, go to this, get your template, take a look at what he's doing, because I'm speaking of like you're not even here, but Ahmad, you're incredibly giving. You're willing to help anybody with anything. You take the stuff to the next level, and you're always showing everybody else new stuff. So thank you for that from the community that we're helping to support. You're fantastic, man. I love this stuff. And again,
thank you.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, and I'm really, really happy to have you part of Measure Summit 2020. So thanks again, man. And if you have time for Q&A, we don't have time now, but we'll have people put questions in the Q&A box, and anything they have, and if you'd be happy to answer them all. Perfect. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.